All right.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. I am going to call this meeting of the Environmental Charter School to order. I'd like to start with a roll call, which I'll start from this end this time. With Jill,
Jill Serena.
Sean Claypool.
Stan O'Loughlin,
Robert Bachari, Nick Unkebeck.
Eleanor Magny.
online folks.
Matthew Messina. Doug Benedict. Julia Robinson.
All right. Thank you. By my count, we have a quorum. It's 9. Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Read our mission statement. The mission of ECS is to educate each child to high academic standards using innovative curricula that will foster knowledge, love of, and respect for the environment, and preserve it for future generations. We grow citizens. Our vision is that every ECS graduate will be an actively engaged citizen, driving thoughtful change in the world around them. And welcome everybody. Thanks for coming in the rain. You are here in person. I'm going to move around a little bit of the agenda items tonight because I believe we do have some public comment. But first, I just want to quickly recognize we do have a guest here tonight. Margaret Winnan is observing tonight's meeting and is potentially interested in joining our board. So I want to thank her for coming, for her interest. A little bit, Margaret relocated from to Pittsburgh a couple of years ago from the West Coast with her family. She works for this obscure company called Google. And before she worked at Google, which has been, I guess, a number of years, right? She worked at a charter school in Los Angeles. Professional background is operations, HR, and I'm sure other things that I couldn't do justice to. But most important, her son is going to be joining our kindergarten class this fall. So we're excited that she's interested and that she's another person who's joining our community. And say hello when you have a chance. So thanks for coming. So now I'd like to move. Again, we're going to move up the public comment because we do have an executive session. So I'd like to hopefully get you folks who would like to speak. Make sure you have a chance to get in and don't have to wait through that if you don't want to stay for the balance of the meeting, which of course you're welcome to do. It looks like, let's see, we have about 5 people, I think, signed up for public comments. So just some quick ground rules, just so we, since we have a number of people who are signed up tonight, just to keep the meeting moving. As I mentioned, there are 5 people that signed up. In order to speak at the meeting, you have to sign up ahead of time. So if you haven't signed up, you won't be on the list. People that I call, I'll call you up to the front, and you don't mind coming up here to the table. And I'll recognize you and give you an opportunity to speak. I ask that comments be kept to 3 minutes or less if possible, just to keep it moving. And just make sure you provide your full name for the record at the beginning of your 3 minutes. And just to step back for a second, this is something we really value. Community interaction. It's an opportunity for us to hear from the community, not for us to define or tell you what we think. And so we're not going to, this isn't a forum where we'll be engaging or responding, and so don't take anything from that. This is our opportunity where we really want to take in your comments and listen. And members may ask follow-up questions, but But generally, we'll, take what you give us under advisement, and we really do value it and talk about it and think about it. So, so I do want to thank you for participating. But that's the general gist of it. So with that, why don't I call the first person on my list, which is Sarah Bartholomew Fisher.
Hello,
Welcome.
my name is Sarah Bartholomew Fisher. I don't love public speaking. Now I'm holding a microphone. I am here to talk about the buses. I have two daughters, one in 5th grade and 6th grade, so next year they'll both be in middle school. I have concerns about getting rid of the buses for the middle schoolers. With the temperament of middle schoolers, at the beginning of the school year, my daughter was beat up waiting for the bus. She did snitch, but then she got beat up. And so due to several altercations between students, they no longer wait outside for the bus. They wait in the hallways where the teachers can keep track of them. And then as their buses pull up, they're called out by bus by bus. So letting all of the students from the middle school go, and as a parent noted last week, majority of them will be taking that same first bus. So they're going to be walking 7 minutes to that bus, and then jockeying to get on that first bus, because they're not all going to fit on that first bus, along with whatever insults happen to happen during the day. That to me just seems prime time for physical altercations to be taking place. And I don't know how you then keep students safe, right? Like, we expect them to behave themselves, whether they're at school or in public. But they don't do it at school, so why would they do it at public? I mean, they're middle schoolers. It's hard to whatever, make good choices. On top of the fact that, again, as noted last week, there are not good bus lines to get to this school. A majority of students will need to do a transfer. In general, I think society takes care of our kids, but in our options for bus routes to get here, they probably would have to transfer on the busway, which is not, right, no cars passing by, not a lot of pedestrians keeping eyes. So kids are going to be getting off and then having to walk up or down out of the busway to, again, have society's eyes watching and making sure that they're okay. In general, we have the second bus, it comes, I think, more regularly. The first bus, if they miss it, it's going to be a while until they are able to catch a secondary bus. So chances of them missing the bus, either due to them being a little slow getting the bus stop, or the bus, right, because you can track the bus, and the bus says it's coming, and then it's 3 stops past now, because it was not a correct indication of where the bus actually was. So then they're going to be late to school, right, have to wait for the next bus to come, or they wait and they're sitting somewhere and there's a lull in buses for the transfer. Now they're just sitting on a corner waiting. It could be pouring rain out, it could be snowing, it could be super duper hot. There could be kids who are trying to jump you, waiting at the same bus stop as you. And in general, I know, again, talking about safety with this busing, when Pittsburgh Public does not provide busing for their middle schoolers, we're in a different situation than Pittsburgh Public, because our students come from all over Pittsburgh, and those bus rides, again, generally doesn't require a transfer between buses. And I know that you're in a tough place with funding and trying to figure out how to do it. And I know you have been considering buying buses and using our buses to bus, offering the opportunity for staff to be able to drive those buses for additional income. I guess that did not work out, but I'm hoping that you figure out something, because there are, my bus chain, we have a bus chain in the morning that tells us, okay, we hit the next stop. Multiple families have said that they will intend to pull their students if busing is not provided next year, just because it's not feasible for them to be able to reliably get their children here safely.
Thank you, Sam. Any questions? Okay, I'd like to call the next person on the list. I have Sarah Stillman. Sarah
She got
Stillman.
stuck at work, I think.
I'm sorry?
I think she got stuck at work.
Okay. I'll move to the next person then. Toby McHenry. Hi, Toby.
Hello. My name is Toby McHenry. I'm a PPS resident and mom to a current 3rd grader, 7th grader, and an ECS alumni who's now at Alderdice. I'm also the PCO volunteer who puts together the directory every year, and I've done that for the past 12 years. And I'm here to ask the board to please keep yellow school buses for the ECS middle school, at the very least for one more year. I know there's many logistical challenges to the PRT busing. I know you heard about it last month when my husband came and talked to the board meeting, and he presented data about real bus routes students would have to take based on the addresses in the directory. And the route crowding that he talked about was even evident in the email that Patrick sent out to the ECS parent community on May 12th. There was included an infographic describing bus routes from possible students that could take it from Swiss Elm Park and Greenfield and the Hill District and Squirrel Hill. And all those examples ended with students boarding the 71A for their final leg of the commute to school. So I hope the board has had time over the past month to think about those real world challenges of public busing. But my main message today is not about the logistical problems with busing. My concern is that parents were not notified about this major change to ECS policy until everyone had already made their decisions about enrollments for the 2025-26 school year. When our current 7th grader was making her decision about where to attend middle school, she was deciding between SciTech and ECS Middle. Both programs had a lot to offer, but we chose ECS largely because it made our lives more manageable. My 2 girls could board the same bus every morning at the same time, ride the same bus home together, and when necessary, the younger one can ride to middle and get off there, and I can pick them both up together. If ECS does not have a bus to middle school, in the future, 2027, 28, when the 3rd grader comes around, I don't think we will send her to ECS middle school. By that time, though, at least we will know in advance what the transportation situation is. Parents who made decisions for this year did it assuming there would be busing. The announcement about PRT busing wasn't made until after PPS magnet applications were closed and private school deadlines had passed. ECS waited until after other options were unavailable to announce this change, and I feel that it's unfair and inconsiderate to families who have chosen ECS middle school for their kids. I would advocate to keep middle school busing permanently for many years to come. But if it must be cut, I think it's only fair and reasonable to postpone this cut for one more year. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next is James Short.
Everybody, thank you. James Short, parent of a 7th grader. First off, thank you for this opportunity to speak. Thank you for everything you've done. Had 2 children go pretty much fully through ECS. Absolutely loved it. Loved your teachers. Loved education. Reason I'm here, live in Swiss Elm Park. Obviously, busing huge concern for us. My wife and I both work. We're not able to. It seems like it takes like an hour to get from the east across East End to that part of the school, right? I wrote exactly one word on my hand, it's contraction. And I just think that, like, ask yourself, how many people are thinking about just not coming back, right? My son's in 7th grade. We're only a year away from another school decision as it is right now, right? The discussion we're having among our peer groups, our neighbors, other bus riders, it's either carpooling or changing schools. Looking at the proposed bus lines, I can't believe I'm 49 years old. I can't believe it's 2025, right? Time is precious to me. My son, the infographic went out. It was Swiss Elm Park, 0.5 miles, 12 minutes to the bus stop. Google address to the first bus stop, it is 1.1 miles, is 25 minutes. So just getting to a bus stop and back is 2 miles plus 50 minutes. That's not considering time on a bus. That's not considering transfers, all that other stuff. So if my son's not at school, I want him at home. I don't want him spending hours commuting, right? That's just like wasted time. So, it's very frustrated. I appreciate this opportunity, but to me, it's just quality of life, right? Like, if there's a better way we can do this. I totally agree with what everybody else said as well, too. Like, had we there next year, we might make different decisions. But I just, just think about yourself. I mean, the conversation for us isn't how to make the bus work. It's can you carpool or go to a different school. So, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. The last person on my list is Kim Brown. Hi, Kim. Come on up.
Hi, I'm Kim Brown. I live in the Brookline area. My son is a rising third grader, and I wanted to talk about the bus for the middle schoolers. I know it doesn't affect my son next year, but if it was to take effect, I wanted to kind of voice my concerns. My first concern is with the Pittsburgh Regional Transit and the cuts they're presenting. Our first bus we would take would be the number 39, and that's one of the routes that is being considered to be gotten rid of, along with a lot of the routes in our area. So it would be difficult to find an alternative that would get him to the second bus stop to take his transfer. My husband and I have voiced our concerns with the everything we could do with the PRT, since my husband takes it every day. But that was the first concern. The second one kind of mirrors what everybody else is saying as far as the maturity and the ability for students that age, of middle school age, to be able to navigate the transit system and everything safely and adapt to any changes such as like late buses, missing their connection and stuff like that. For me, it goes one step further. For my son and other children like my son who have developmental disabilities, where his sensory processing and social cues and everything that goes along with planning this trip on the bus can be the more difficult, along with executive functioning and where he has to like plan out what he has to do and pay attention to where he's at. I know he's come a long way, but even in his first year here, he started in first grade. He got off at the wrong school. So it just kind of worries me a little bit. I know that he should get there by high school and be able to navigate it, but it's just concerns with that.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Well, I just want to thank everybody who came in to speak. As I said, the last meeting, which was last week, this is a really important issue, and we really value everybody's contribution from the community about this, all issues, of course, but particularly this. And I do have one thing just to clarify. I think no decision has been made. It's so. And I know that our administrative team actually rolled out the budget early this year because they recognized that this would be a concern and that people would want to know early. But there hasn't been a decision by the board certainly to adopt this. So we're taking very seriously all the concerns. I mean, it may be something that we adopt, and I understand some of the concerns about being able to having enrolled and everything else. But I just do want to clarify that and to thank everybody for coming and having this constructive dialogue, and something we're going to continue to look at as we go forward. So I appreciate it. Yes,
So I prepared to say a few things about transportation
sure.
when we get to the mission moment, but since folks are here and I know you want to get into executive session, if it's all right, I'll just do that now.
Yeah,
I think
that's
the main
probably
focus.
good.
So just as a quick update, and I'll just echo the board chair's expression of gratitude for people to come out and share their thoughts. We certainly have valued that at the last meeting and at the meeting of the PCO, and as well as the survey. So there are three things I want to report on. One, we put out a survey and asked families to sort of provide honest feedback to us to help us sort of see what they're thinking. And we decided that the best way to get that out to folks is to send it out across the district and to send it out as an email. So I'll just share some quick highlights from that. We sent out the survey when we announced this, which was actually before the board meeting, so it was, I believe, in earlier mid-April. And we sent out the survey link. We've received 65 responses, which, if you think about the impacted families, it's a little bit less than a third. So it's not a robust, but it's not a bad sample. And we've gotten good information from it. We asked families to sort of help us understand, what's the frequency of your use of the yellow bus? Not every student is using the yellow bus every day. There are lots of reasons for that. But we got some information about that, how often the yellow bus is late, the length of the rides, and a whole bunch of things like that. So we'll have that information. We'll share that out with people so they can see the responses. Obviously, we'll share that with the board. We asked people to share their levels of concern, and not surprisingly, there was a lot of concern. So that's good and good feedback. I'll just share this highlight, thinking about the comments that we heard earlier. About the different ways that people are thinking about it. I think you said in the bus chain, people were thinking about carpooling or considering other options for schooling. And that actually aligns nicely. Of the six, we asked people to share so they could click all the ones that were appropriate. But, if this happened, would you use PRT? Would you consider carpooling? Would you be interested in bus buddy systems? Would you consider enrolling your student in another school? Check all the above. And so 46 of the 65 respondents said they would consider enrolling their student in another school, 47. 46 of the respondents said that they were interested in either a bus buddy system or carpooling. So that aligns with the comments that we heard earlier. So our team, we'll put that out in a communication and we'll share that. I don't know if it'll be this week or next week, but it's coming soon. And then in addition to that, we spent time, we'd done this before we made the announcement. There's a funny story about this, but we had a teacher who had a better idea about how to approach this work, and it involves AI. And I'll just note that in creating some code, this was back in mid-April. And so that actually, I'll just make a quick comment here. That conversation about the use of AI has also led to a series of ancillary discussions. If we use this, what's the impact as far as privacy? If we use this, what are some of the ethical things we need to consider? So a bunch of interesting conversations have spun out of that, just as a side note. But we have put together some analysis, and what we'll be doing is sharing. I'm just looking to cast this up here. What's that? Yeah, I got to get this up right. We will be looking to share that information, the analysis, also in an email. Forgive me, let me just find this. There it is. And let me just go back up. Oops, sorry. But one of the things that we'll be doing, so Elvin Pepra put together, he did a couple of different things. The first thing he did was we gave him some arrival times and some departure times. Just a quick note on this. You'll note if your parent, particularly those times don't align with your current experience, that's partly because if we were to do this, we want to think about what might be the best times for using this kind of transportation. So this is not a decision, but we're using that as a sample or an example. We looked at a whole bunch of different things. We looked at AM and PM route, the shortest AM PM routes with the least transfers. You can see all the different things, and you can see the tools that Elvin used. We did this, and we will be sending an email to each family that shows, okay, here's what we believe based on your home address and the start times and end times for a school day. Here's the shortest route as far as time for your students to travel from home to school and school to home. And then here's also a look at the least transfer routes for the student from home to school and school to home, AM, PM. So we'll send that out. I'm not quite sure, we haven't finalized whether or not we'll send any information about what we believe the current yellow bus ride time is, but that's something we also want to look at. But we did get some other information about that, so that'll be helpful. We also, this will be just a little teaser of the kinds of information pieces that we'll be sending home. But when we looked at the impacted students, you can see in this slide the number of students or the percentage of students that would be required in the AM to make a single bus transfer. So they would ride 2 buses, make 1 transfer. The number of students that could ride a single bus, the number of students that might have to ride 3 buses. And you can see that for the afternoon. You can see on the bottom, again, this would be the least transfers. We just picked those as two variables to consider. And I believe, if I remember correctly, between 23 and 28, let's see if I can just pull that up really quickly. There's an interesting percentage of, hold on, give me 1 second. Between 21 and 25 of our students will have the choice of avoiding a transfer to a second bus in the morning. So that's part of what we're looking at here. And between 17 and 28% of our students would have the choice of avoiding a transfer in the second bus in the afternoon. And we'll share more information about this. Last time there were lots of comments, and we heard it some this evening, about the number of students that would ride particular buses. And so we took a look at that, and it's indeed the case that the 71, you'll see this in the data, but the 71 would be a bus that would be overloaded. Just so we're clear, we did have a conversation with PRT before we ever started this conversation in the public, and I think a couple weeks before we started, and PRT said obviously they would want to know if we were to do this, they would need to make some adjustments. We had the same experience with them when I served on the Board of Education, and we had routes going through Oakland. So, you know, that there are issues as it relates to their funding. I think that was also brought up, totally legitimate concern. We see that too, but they said they would at least be willing. So anyway, the point is we can sort of look at some of this data. Another piece, if I can just swing back, another set of data that he sort of put together for us, the walking miles. So there is a limit on the number of miles that students can be forced to walk in order to get to school. So we're very conscious of that. And so he's put together sort of a frequency chart to look at how many students would have to walk how far in the morning and in the afternoon, depending on the types of routes that they would be using. And so you can see a little bit there.
Excuse me, Patrick,
Yep.
just a quick question. Is there a prescribed way that mileage is measured? Is it as the crew flies, or is it walking around the edges of the block? I just heard Mr. Short flag a half mile versus his actual practical is 1 point something.
I don't know the exact answer to that, so I'll have to find out. But I'm pretty sure it's I believe anyway, it's the shortest route that you would safely be able to take, and that's the safety question is a whole other conversation. But let me get the answer for you. I don't have it off the top of my head. Again, you can see some information here about AM travel time and PM travel time, the amount of time, the number of students who would be traveling. Anyway, the point is, this is just a teaser. We're planning to put this together to send, so we'll have essentially 2 emails, one that would be individualized for families to look at potential routes if this were approved, and then the budget were approved, and it would necessitate this move. And then the second piece would be some information about both the surveys and some of the data analysis that we've been doing to share out with families. So our hope is to get that out and to continue the discussion. And that's all I have at this point.
Any questions, discussion? Okay. With that.
Thank you.
So next item, obviously we're going a little off agenda here, but is our annual safety and security report. And for that, we're going to go a little, again, out of our typical meeting order. We're usually doing executive session at the end, but for that, we will go into executive session. But after that briefing, we will come back out of executive session and resume the public portion of our meeting. So to anybody attending or watching or wants to stay, which of course you don't have to do, we'll be back and we'll try to be as efficient as possible. So thanks for your patience. Do I have a motion to go into executive session? Second? Second. All in favor? Okay, we will go into executive session.
Take that with you. No, I'm not gonna close it. That's right.
Yeah,
Okay, you're unmuted.
All right, there we go. Welcome back, everybody. We're out of the executive session. And I will throw it to Patrick.
Thank you. Not in the consent agenda, and I'll just say again, I apologize for not breaking out one of the contracts as we discussed in the executive committee. I will do that in the future with our team. But in the following the consent agenda, as I mentioned in the executive session, we'll ask you to approve the K-12 guidance plan. And we thought this would be a great opportunity for Marissa Stavros, who's been leading this work, to share a little bit about that work with you. So if you have any questions, you can ask her, and then when we get to the plan, hopefully you'll feel comfortable and ready to go. So Marissa, take it away.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
You might have to pick up.
Okay.
Is it on?
There you go.
It's loud enough? Okay.
Hi. As Patrick said, my name is Marissa Stavros. I'm the Executive Director of Youth Services at ECS. For those of you I haven't met, I've been with ECS since 2015. And in a variety of roles, I was initially the first school psychologist ECS was hired. So I'm here to share a little bit about our school guidance plan. It is something that's approved by the state. So just a little agenda. I'll share the purpose and then some of the plan highlights. I believe they're going to have access to the plan. So it's broken up into a variety of different ways. What I'm really explaining today is how this plan is implemented and hitting the highlights that you'll see throughout the plan. So we'll go over the team structure, some of the roles, the curriculum, our career standards, and then our advisory council. So a little bit about the purpose. So this came from Chapter 339, which is Pennsylvania code that mandates that there's a comprehensive guidance plan for K through 12. It needs to be directly aligned to the Pennsylvania Career Education and Work Standards, which they call the CEUs. The CEUs are broken down into 4 different categories: career awareness and preparation, career acquisition, career retention and advancement, and entrepreneurship. So today I'll be really focused just on that. This is maybe about a third of what our counselors do. They have a very wide range of roles here at ECS. I would be happy to answer any questions and talk about later. From counseling, of course, they do our 504s, they support our MTSS system, support families, they do school events in the building. So they do a lot, but we're just focused here today on the career standards that they're working on. So a little bit, just the foundations of our career and guidance plans at ECS. So of course, it's Chapter 339 compliant. It's also aligned to the American School Counselor Association. They have a series of mindsets and behaviors that they put out for best practices to build success for post-secondary students. So it's aligned to that. They focus on child development for academic support, social emotional support, and careers. The program by building has goals for each one of these areas so we can continue to move our work forward every year. And it supports our district-wide mission of equity in building a successful MTSS model. MTSS, for those of you that don't know, are multi-tiered systems of support. It's a way to provide students with increasing levels of intervention within the general education setting. So some of the highlights are team structure. We are very proud to say we have 5 school counselors. We have 1 in primary building, intermediate, and middle. You can see the ratios there. They're all right around best practices through ASCA. And then at the high school, we have 2 counselors. 1 is our career college counselor. She's focused specifically on post-secondary goals, helping with graduation, and planning and implementing this guidance plan at the high school. And then we also have another school counselor too. So a little bit about our curriculum overview. So how our counseling classroom lessons work is they push into classrooms. They do this approximately once a month. They focus on a wide range of skills, such as anti-bullying, career development, sexual violence prevention, SEL lessons, executive functioning, and academic skill building. And as I said, they're all aligned to ASCA and our 339 standards. So that's how they complete their lessons. And then here's a small overview of what those lessons look like. So everything is done through a restorative practices foundation. It's done in circles and classroom. These are led by our teachers. and it's built around discussion. So our counselors help drive the curriculum that students are exposed to every day. There's a time in each building for SEL and restorative practices. So in K-5, they use a program called Second Step. It teaches bullying, emotion regulation, conflict resolution, and problem solving. And they also use Common Sense Media, which helps with online safety. Our 6-8 building has daily crew lessons. They use a curriculum called Wayfinder, and we focus on self-awareness, empathy, conflict resolution, healthy relationships, and adaptability. The 9 through 12, they also have crew lessons. They're focusing on things like gratitude, strategies for motivation, listening skills, technology, social skills. And this year we had a partnership with PARB, and they came in to do our sexual violence prevention presentations. Our career and work standards are implemented. So as I said, there's the 4 different components of the CEUs. Each building or grade bands take one of those and really highlight it. So of course, our K-5 is focused on career awareness. We do counseling lessons to increase personal interest awareness. We do career days that I believe some of you have participated in the past, so thank you, and please continue to do so. We also start inventory so students can start to think about their future and interests. 6-8, we're working on acquisition. Our counselors do lessons around resume writing, interview practice, and academic and career planning. And then in 9th through 12th grade, the focus is really on retention, entrepreneurship. We have a class this year, it's called Studio, that is all of our CEUs are integrated into that class. So we're able to apply these standards into what they're learning through core content. We focus on leadership skills, amongst other, post-secondary preparation. The one piece with these CEUs is that we have to hold portfolios for all of them. We hold our K-4 ones in the counselor's office. They're paper copies. It's recommended that 2 artifacts are collected each year. 5 through 12, we hold in an electronic portfolio called Naviance. And then we need between each grade level has a certain number of artifacts or standards that need taught. So in 5th grade, you have to, 5th and 8th grade, by those times you have to collect 6 pieces of evidence. In 8th grade, you have to have an individualized career plan. And then by 11th grade, you need to do 8 pieces of evidence. That includes 2 evidence for career plan implementation. We do more than that, especially at high school. We've been working to really integrate our CEs into, how to prepare for post-secondary. We do things in crew. So while this is the minimum, we do more than that. And then some more activities just broken down by standards. So as I said, we do career day, we do interest inventories for career, personality. We work on applying to post-secondary plans for our high school students, our high schoolers, do a lot of different career fairs, visits. We bring in a lot of different programs into school. They do lunch talks with students. For acquisition, we're doing decision-making lessons, goal setting, resume creation, cover letters, mock interviews. Next year, we're proud to say we are launching our first internship program for our seniors. So that's something new that's coming we're very excited about. With retention, we do lessons around personal space, executive functioning, conflict communication. Our senior projects are very focused on career retention. Surveys on the cost of college, and then we run leadership groups across the buildings for peer mediation and peer mentoring. Then entrepreneurship, we do lessons on that. Quest Lab, which is a middle school program, and does different field trips for entrepreneurship, and then of course career day. And then just the final piece, so we also have an advisory council. This is a group of volunteers. It's made up of students, parents, guardian staff, administrators, business and community members, and post-secondary representatives. It is really to help strengthen our program and get feedback from the community and important stakeholders. So they review our counseling program, the goals, actions, we get feedback on that. We share data and get feedback on. We hear recommendations from the community, and then this meets 3 times a year, and we always touch on our chapter 339 plan. Any questions?
Thank you, first of all. So if I understand correctly, this is state mandated.
Yes.
Now, is there any flexibility to weave in an environmental component into a lot of this? Because I see that when it comes to the career planning or some of the proponents of the evidence, I didn't see much about environmentalism. And so I'm kind of curious how you're approaching that, or if you are really, how rigid the guidelines are.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the standards are actually quite broad. There's a wide list of them under each one of those 4 categories. So we always consider how that fits, right? Our studio class has an environmental focus, so we're integrating our standards into that. I mean, 1 year for career day, semi-recently, it had a focus on sustainability. So we asked our presenters to talk about how their career upholds sustainability and mission alignment. So we always are thinking about how that environmental education can fit into career. You know, our internships are working to align to our mission too.
Anybody online?
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more vision moment? Or-
Nope, that is it. We're ready for the consent agenda and the other business items.
All right, I always enjoy the vision moment. Okay, so on the consent agenda, any questions or comments, discussion on any of these items folks want to have? Particularly on some of the, on anything, of course, but on any of the contracts, large contract items, either on, I guess, the furniture, right, Patrick, and some of the technology, computer purchases, that's all under one resolution, is that right?
I'm sorry?
The consent agenda, and it's for purposes of voting, the consent agenda, the first resolution includes, it looks like most of the consent agenda, and then
Yeah,
the furniture and the technology purchases.
exactly. That's what I meant earlier, but I didn't break them out. I will in the future.
Right. Any comments, questions about discussion on any of those, or should we vote? Okay.
I asked this question during one of our finance ones, but around furniture, can you talk about, I guess, the need for this furniture, why we're going with WB Mason, we looked at other vendors, and just the procurement process? It's being presented through CoStar's, right?
Yes, actually, this contract was approved last month. There was just a slight modification in the numbers. So the quantity increased from 101 to 100, yes, just so you know that, so that was approved, so it's a slight increase. But this is a routine upgrade at the intermediate school, so every few years we do an upgrade at the schools for updating the desks and chairs and teachers' desks and chairs as well, so this is a total grade upgrade at intermediate school. This is also a CoStar's vendor that we're using for this purchase, and we purchased some furniture last year with the same vendor. Was kind of organizing this, so we want to make sure that we're being consistent with the same kinds of materials in the school buildings.
And this is a brand that we're familiar with, that we like along, we've got good use out of this longevity wise, it's compatible with the rest of the school, right?
Yes.
Something I'm just curious about, I think we wanted to talk a little bit about why we have iPads and Chromebooks, which are obviously on different platforms. Are there, aside from the question of those two in conjunction, which I think I understand why we opt for different ones for different uses, are there other alternatives to these particular platforms that we considered, or I don't know what alternative technologies or devices that there are that are commonly used for these types of applications?
So the short answer is we're simply replacing this year things that we'll need for the coming school year. And our goal in the coming school year is to do a strategic plan around technology. and to look carefully at lots of different aspects of that. And so to look specifically at the kinds of equipment that we're using, the kinds of software that we're using, and to see if we can be better integrated so that, you know, all of our software packages are working together more efficiently. They're working with our website, they're working with our hardware, that kind of stuff. So we will be doing, that's a project that we're really going to be embarking on, we believe next year, next week. So.
That's helpful, and obviously, pending all of that, and it may yield some different questions. What is the normal, or what is historical, I guess, is the cycle in which we are doing these types of purchases? Annually, is it every 3 years? Or?
So my understanding is we'll be doing some of these purchases annually. Some of this is to replace. I will note that I think the quantity is a little bit different this year because, as you know, and as we just briefly discussed in our safety report, we had a pipe burst in the high school, and in that location, the terrible steam damage, and that was really bad for a number of Chromebooks that we had in there that were either replacement Chromebooks. That's if a student left these were older Chromebooks. If a student had left their good Chromebook at home, we were able to provide them with one during the day. We also had well-functioning machines in there. So there are about, I believe, 71 of the pieces of equipment, the Chromebooks, that shouldn't be covered by insurance. So that's a part of the package.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, maybe a question for Michelle on the WPA interiors or any of the other kind of water purchases. Different vendors pass along to you any unit cost increases? Just thinking about the current economic climate, what the impacts are on ECS, if there's any changes, any across the board increases.
No, we haven't had any of those costs that have been passed on to us at this time.
Pardon, I'm sorry.
No, the answer is no, we haven't had any of those kinds of costs passed on to us at this time, no.
Okay. There's no more questions. I will read the resolution and put it to the vote. Resolution 2025-05-2163. Be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school that the consent agenda for May 2025, which includes the items we just discussed, be approved. Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries, the resolution is adopted. Okay. Next, we will move to business, which consists, let's see, primarily of two resolutions. I'm just going to read the first one, and then we can have discussion and vote. Resolution 2025-05-2164, be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school that the ECS flexible instruction plan be approved. Are there any comments, discussion?
So I'd like to ask our superintendent, Mandy Cribs, to talk a little bit about this plan, just so you are aware. We've talked about it as an executive committee, but I think it's important to talk about it here. Also, an education committee too.
Absolutely. So this would be the plan that would be enacted in case of any sort of event that we can't hold our normal school day, that we were scheduled to be in person. So it could be weather related, it could be safety related, there's lots of reasons. And it is usually used in schools when they get below 180 school days. We have 187 school days, so typically we have not had to use the idea of a flexible instruction plan to cover 180 days. However, this year we saw lots of events and weather-related items that have kind of given me pause to say that we need to have a plan to fall back on just in case something were to happen and we need to go below those 180 physical instruction days. So this plan is what we have been using or used since kind of COVID area, and then also upgraded for our high school. So in the plan, you see how we will provide asynchronous and synchronous instruction to students K-12. Our high school has decided that they would like to have more synchronous time with students. So they're going to run a half-day schedule synchronously in the morning and then provide asynchronous time to students for work. And then our K-8 students would like to have more office hours for families so that they have the ability to call into a Google Meet. You can always use your phone to call into a Google Meet or do the live session with their computer so that they have access to their educators if they have any sort of questions about the work that's provided for them. I also have to turn in sample lessons, so all of those will be provided to the state so that they can also think about whether or not our instruction is up to standards and protocols for any of the flexible instruction plans that are out there. I'm happy to answer any questions.
For the synchronous work that high school does, we issue them devices, right? So that's a one-to-one, students have devices, they're not relying on home devices, correct?
Correct, and that's a good question. I think the difference in why high school has chosen to do that is they are the only school where the students take those Chromebooks home regularly every night. So we can say with more confidence that they will have those devices at home. Whereas our middle school and even younger, while we're one-to-one devices, those stay in the buildings.
And I assume we work with families that if they need devices or connectivity, right? You know, we identify those and work with those individual groups, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that would be our social workers that can do that work at the beginning of every school year. So that's part of the plan too. You have to put that in there.
Any questions? All right. Vote. Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Okay.
Any opposed? Motion carries, the resolution is adopted. The other resolution, which I'll read now, is Resolution 2025-05-2165. Be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school that the ECS K-12 guidance plan be approved. Okay, we just talked a little bit about that, but any discussion? Further discussion? Any questions? Okay, do I have a motion? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Opposed? Okay, the motion carries, the resolution is adopted. Thank you. Okay, so now we will move to item number 9. This is a real packed agenda.
Wait till next.
I'm looking forward to that. I mean, I am looking forward to that. Number 9, policy adoption. I think this is become a regular part of our agenda over the last year plus. Just for a refresher, the board has been conducting an ongoing policy review to ensure that all of our policies are up to date, are electronically searchable and available to our community. These are the board level policies, and mostly that they're serving, they're written in a way that it's serving the best interests of the school. As part of that process, we regularly put out proposed amended versions of policies for community review and discussion. There are 2 of those today, the anti-harassment policy and the admissions/lottery policy that have been socialized and reviewed by the board, posted on our website for community comments, and so we're going to discuss those today. The first policy that we'll consider is the anti-harassment policy. I believe this was first shared in February. We considered it in March. I think it was tabled. And have we received any comments today on this? I think there's no board questions or comments. I don't want to close that, but I'm not expecting any. Is anybody opposed to going to a vote, or are there comments, questions? Okay. Since there's no comments or questions, I will read the resolution, which is Resolution 2025-05-2166, be it resolved by the Board of Trustees of the school that the policy 222, anti-harassment policy, be approved as amended. All in favor?
Do we need a motion?
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Motion.
I'll move.
Second?
Second.
Now, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Resolution is adopted. Don't make it people who are voting against that.
I mean, for us.
Yeah. That's what happens when you want there. Okay, the next one, the other policy that we're looking at tonight is the admissions and lottery policy. We discussed this at our February meeting, I guess, if I recall correctly. And the proposed amended version that was shared with the community back in March. It's been floating around out there. Have we received any comments about this? Okay. This policies continue to evolve a bit. Obviously, it's an important aspect of the school. I think we tabled discussion at our last meeting to allow for some additional development and consideration by the board. Particularly, I know the executive committee has looked at this in the last couple of weeks, and the administration. So with the board's consent on this, I'd like to again consider tabling a final vote on this policy due to some additional proposed changes until our June meeting before the impact, just so we can share updated amended version with the school community for comment and make sure everybody's had a chance to see what we're going to be voting on. I distributed copies, or Tony did, to be more precise, of an updated version to the board, which I'd like to kind of go over just briefly now and talk about and get some feedback from the board. Just a couple of points on, hopefully everybody has that version. This is a revision that, again, is part of the evolution of this, some of the changes that have been proposed to this policy starting a couple of years ago, but most recently back in February. Executive committees considered this and went back and forth with the administration a little bit to try to get it how we want it. First and foremost, most of these revisions I think are technical and not substantive. Things rewritten, moved around, the meaning's not changed, repetitious, redundant language removed, etc. There are some substantive changes, but mostly not. Example, clarify the definition of what is a qualified applicant, but not actually changing who that would be. Just clarifying that the definition to make it so somebody reading it would understand it. Just one clarification, maybe. I want to make sure we have the correct policy number for this. I think there were a few different policy numbers given. We know it says 520. The agenda says 530.
What's the minute to be 520?
Okay. Whatever it is, I just want to make sure we do that. I'll just run through very quickly some of the other changes that you might see. Again, there's a bunch of red ink, but most of these changes are things we moved around. The ones that are a little different, title has been sort of converted to have the focus on admissions, just because admissions and lottery, since admissions is really the catch-all term, and the lottery is just part of the admissions process. So that's just a sort of a general thing. Some of these amendments make it a little bit clearer that it's the CEO who will ultimately determine whether an applicant qualifies for any of the particular lottery preferences, in case there is, as there often is with everything in life, some ambiguity. Want to make sure that that was clear in there. The one that is a substantive kind of addition, I would say, is our previous policy provided lottery preference for siblings, for people in PPS, and for people who participated in the development of the school, including current employees and some trustees, although not all trustees. This proposed version clarifies that part of the preference and applies it to all current and past trustees, with the restriction that they have to be in good standing as determined by the CEO. This is something that's been discussed for a few years. From my perspective, it's in line with state law, which permits charters to give preference to any person who is actively participating in the development of DCS. And as I said, we've always given preference to certain trustees and all of our employees. So this isn't actually that big of a change. There are a lot of reasons for it, which we can talk about. From my perspective, I'm in favor of it. I think it'll help with recruiting and retaining a board. I think it will help align interests. I don't think it will have a huge impact on enrollment, since there are not that many board members and even fewer who have, are going to have a school-aged child in the lottery every year. But anyway, that's something we can certainly discuss. Going a little bit further through this, there was some language in the previous version about kind of reserving rights to do things, or creating new preferences or weighting the lottery. My suggestion was to remove those, because reserving rights is not something we need to do. We either have the right or we don't. If we, as a board, at some point decide to create new preferences that are legal or create or weight things, if that's something that we're allowed to do under the charter law, we can amend the policy to do that. We don't need to reserve the right. So I think that can create confusion, and has created confusion in the past. So that's one of the other changes here. Finally, late applications. I had suggested making a change to simplify that section and basically say, aside from the fact that people who apply late are not part of the lottery, I would defer to the CEO to come up with a process and make the determination on where they would fit on the wait list, et cetera, based on that. I just think that what was written before was confusing and kind of gets us from the board level too into the weeds. That was my personal take on it. So that's the other kind of substantive change, if you want to call it that. So with that, thank you for indulging me, but I wanted to kind of make that clear so we can put this policy to bed soon.
Another quick question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Tabling this one, or we're not out of compliance. We have an acting policy that otherwise is in full force in effect, but we are not out of compliance by tabling. Correct?
No, we're not out of compliance. And yeah, again, the idea of tabling it would be I think procedurally we probably will take a vote, essentially a voice vote to table it, with the idea that we will socialize this version or further amendment, I guess. That's something that the board wants. For another public comments, it does have some substantive changes, and then vote, put it on the agenda to vote next time. That would be the kind of what we would be agreeing to or not here. That's what I'm asking the board to do.
Just one other comment or question is there any need for an appeal process if someone thinks that they should or shouldn't have a particular preference, knowing that they go to the CEO, but if there is a true dispute, is there a need for a dispute resolution?
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't thought about that. I haven't done it. I'll just say for I'll further our administration, but as some of you know, I took a long look at this policy historically over the last couple of years and looked at a number of other schools' policies. I haven't seen anything quite like that. In fact, most of them are not very clear on how the preferences even apply, which is in the language that was added. So that might, something we can certainly consider if we think it's necessary. I don't know that it's ever been an issue to that level, but.
That I'm aware of, I mean, we have actually had some incidents or situations, probably better said, this year where I could imagine there might have been a dispute, but there wasn't such a dispute. And I mean, I think we could probably get that resolved either, if, for example, you're not a Pennsylvania resident and you applied to a charter school in Pennsylvania without a resident, or using a false resident or something like that. Just that I'm pulling that as an example. And we said, oh, sorry, we've now learned this. We have to revoke your application, or we have to revoke your admission if a student went through the lottery. And there was a dispute. I mean, I think at the end of the day, that would probably get resolved through some sort of legal action. That would be my guess. And at least in one of the cases that we had this year, we contacted our solicitor and had a conversation about that to make sure that we were, applying whatever rules we were applying at the time to make sure it was applied correctly. So I feel like we should be able to resolve those, or it would get resolved at some higher level, if that makes sense.
I think that's probably, I mean, it's not my exact area of expertise, but I think that's probably the answer, because my concern would be, creating inadvertently, I guess, procedural rights that don't exist that you wouldn't normally have legally speaking, and they're probably, I don't know, unfortunately, some of my knowledge about this is New York specific, but in Pennsylvania, I'm sure that there's a procedure by which any determination like this, you can bring a legal challenge and say that, we're acting arbitrarily, capriciously, and, if we were to create an additional sort of appeal right, that could potentially make our, open up an area that would be problematic for us. But I think probably letting that sort of legal process handle that makes sense, but certainly I'm open to suggestions. Other discussion, concerns, thoughts?
Just a question for clarity. So it's the will of the board that this proposed amendment would be the amendment that the version that we put online effective essentially tomorrow. Is that what I'm hearing from the board, or?
That's what I'd be asking the board to agree to, yes.
You just want us to say
Yeah,
yes.
voice.
Or essentially, is it an amendment of the resolution of the policy?
Yeah, I don't know if we need to do a formal resolution to do that, since we don't, normally when we agree to, put something up on our website as something for consideration for public comment, we don't normally vote on a resolution.
No, we don't.
Yeah, so I think if the board is comfortable with that, or if anybody disagrees that we should put this version out for public comment and table the vote until next time, speaking now for trees, I guess is probably the best thing to do.
Yeah, I'm certainly in favor of putting this version up. I can deal with questions from the administration if they have any other further tweaks to it. They've had the opportunity to take a look at it and post any small verbiage changes to it as well.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like they're okay with it. Then maybe we could put it up on Friday if there's any major concerns, we can deal with that. But that works for everybody. If there's any opposition to that, let us know. Otherwise, I think we're good to go. All right, thanks, everybody. Okay. Next, number 10, other business. Okay, I do have one item of other business. just a reminder, according to our bylaws, we will be electing our board officers at the June meeting. Adam isn't able to be here today, but I know he's been on top of this, and he suggested that I announce our slate based on discussions that he and I and others I know had, and others have been mentioned before in the last few months. But the slate that's gonna be offered for consideration at the June meeting for board officers is going to propose that the current board officers will be reelected for an additional one-year term. That's me as president, Megan Leach as vice president, Matthew Rendulic as secretary, and Rohit Acharya as treasurer. All the current officers have indicated an interest in continuing in their roles, which I'm personally grateful for. And been a great group to work with. From my perspective, I think continuity is valuable, especially in this current time. You know, we have obviously I can't remember how long, less than a year into the CEO transition. And so I think it's really great that this group has agreed to do this, but obviously, if anyone has any questions or concerns about that, or alternative proposals, or interest in future consideration for a board office position, you know, let me know, talk to Adam, talk to anybody. That's going to be presented at the June meeting, so just so everybody's on the same page on that. Any questions or discussion
I
on
do have
that?
a question. This
Yeah.
is just a bylaws question. Are ours set up where it presumes that the vice president is the next candidate after the current president steps down? Some boards are very specific about that, some are absolutely not, so.
Ours
I
is
should know that by
not. The last time I looked at it, which I think was today, if I remember correctly, I didn't see that, and that's not my recollection. I know you're right, and that's part of the reason I looked at it.
It's about, sort of continuity and training and things like that.
Right.
So I don't know if it's something we might want to consider at some point,
Yeah,
not to belabor this right this minute.
No, I'd say the past president, the outgoing president stays on the executive.
So you have like.
I mean, for that continuity, for that very reason.
yeah.
And,
Okay, and that's, got
and as a voting member of the executive. So,
And I think culturally, we've gone through a few different phases where I think early on, or a few years ago, presidents had often officers stayed for a long time. We had one president for years. In the last few years, I think it's sort of turned over every year, more like along those lines, although not formally to the VP, but we've had people kind of coming and going. So yeah, I think that's, so culturally, we've done a few different things, but the bylaws are fairly flexible on that front. They don't require that, so, yeah, that's how it works. But yeah, anybody who's interested or wants to discuss, or, that's something I'm certainly happy to do. Okay, so.
So then I just, if we're switching other business, one quick general question from Michelle. Budget's out there, still no public comment. I think it was the last update, so.
and last thing, fill out the ethics form, right?
That's right. It's on the table. I'll bring it to the executive session.
And I understand it's every 4 years or?
No, every year.
Every year.
Ethics, are we talking about the statement of financial interest?
Yeah, it's a state, it's called, I think it's the state ethics form.
Okay.
But those, yeah, that'd be
Are you sure it's every year?
Sorry.
Yeah. All right.
Don't worry, it's not just you, we have staff members that have to do it too. And I'm one of them as well.
Any other business, any other business? Okay. 11, reports. Do we have any CSFT report there?
No.
Okay. PCL report, I got, I think maybe all of us got, an email from Becky Marinhoff, PCO, which I will read. The PCO's May meeting was held virtually on Friday, May 9th. We had over 35 guests attend to hear from Dr. Dowd about the potential upcoming changes to transportation at the middle school. We had very good dialogue and heard from many parents about what those changes can mean for their families. Our last meeting of the year will be on Friday, June 6th at noon. We'll be voting on our budget, officers, and calendar for the upcoming school year. PCO had a presence at both Green Roots sustainability fairs. We had a used book sale and uniform sale at the May 9th fair at the intermediate school, and a book swap at the May 16th fair at the middle school. The first week in May was a busy one for our parent volunteers as we spent the week honoring our teachers. 4 luncheons with food from Jack's Bakery, ECS family owned, 4 breakfasts, decals courtesy of 3C Signs, ECS family owned, restocking supplies for classrooms, supplies for the office managers and nurses, gift cards from Giant Eagle for all staff, and raffles. What a week. Even though it is May, we are beginning to work on things for the next school year. Thank you for your support during this year. Thanks, Becky. Okay. With that, are we ready for executive session number 2? Unless there's anything else before we do that? Okay, do I have a motion? Second. All in favor? All right. We're in executive session.